Welcome back to the channel. I am trying my own hand at a deck tech since Tyler did his, and I was kind of inspired slash jealous that it looked like a lot of fun. So I am showing you my favorite deck of all time, Magus Lucea Kane. It is a wonderful, wonderful deck that I've had for 2 years now, and I've played it on the channel a couple times. I've shown it off, and I figured I'd go into more depth and kind of go into the nitty gritty of why I have what I have in the deck. The joke with Landfall is that people will ask me what the deck does. I will tell them Landfall. They see the deck happen and they're like, that's not Landfall. So I'll show you why it is Landfall, because I think it is. So we're going to go into the commander itself. Magus is a 1 and teamer that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature. It does not have to be your own, but 9 times out of 10, I always put it on Magus herself because she is a 1/1. The first ability is not really why we're playing the commander. It's the second ability, which is tap, add 2 colorless. The next spell that you cast that has X in its mana cost is copied. Really, really strong. And that is the ability that we're really building around, which is super broken and super strong. You can one-shot the table with enough mana and the right spell. Depending on the pod, if they don't really know what Magus is doing, you can really slip under the radar because they only really know Magus from the 40k precon that she came in, and they are kind of expecting maybe some Tyrannid, some big creatures, not really expecting you to come out of nowhere with like a big burn spell or a big spell to just knock everybody out of the game. And because they're not really expecting to get knocked out of the game out of nowhere, like I said, you can kind of use that to your advantage. Unfortunately, that means once you start playing Magus, people will catch on and they'll realize, like, wow, this commander really can't stick around for long. The theme of the deck, I guess you could say, is kind of, like I said, the joke, is that I tell people it's Landfall. Realistically, it's Landfall / big creatures, big spells. We're using Landfall to really ramp into big spells and big creatures, and we're using Magus to do that because she taps for mana herself, so she is in fact just ramp in the command zone, but she's a key to the deck. Copying spells is really what we're trying to do, and you really have to dedicate a lot of the deck to protecting Magus, and we're going to do that with our interaction. We're going to do that with creating big creatures to kind of help people from swinging into us, so we're not too worried about taking a lot of damage from combat. This is like the main bread and butter of the deck, is the Landfall / big spells, big creatures. So the pros and cons of the deck are that you can do the thing, i.e. you can copy your spells with very little setup. You just really need a lot of mana in Magus. Sometimes you don't even need a lot of mana, you just need enough mana to start that snowball effect of starting to, get into more mana, get into more spells, draw more spells, get more stuff. Because of the color pairing, we're getting a ton of mana fast anyway. Teamer inherently is good at dumping a lot of lands out quickly, so Magus herself is also a ramp piece in the command zone, as we talked about. I jokingly call her Soul Ring in the command zone. So it's very easy for us to get a lot of mana. There are multiple ways to win in the deck as well. I tried to build it that way on purpose. I want, even when one part fails, or maybe we didn't necessarily hit a big spell and we knocked people out of the game with one big swoop, instead we slow burn people over time with Landfall or smaller combats over time, whatever the case may be. Like I said, there's lots of different ways to win that we'll go over at the end. Some of the cons of the deck is that there is a lack of haste with Magus. Because it's a tap ability, you really want to, if Magus had haste, it would solve all of our problems, but I don't dedicate a lot of space in the deck to giving Magus haste because I just don't want to take up too many of those slots. You could probably argue that there should be more haste in the deck. Teamer has a lot of great ways to give haste, but I haven't included them. I'm run 1 with Arena of Glory just because it's a land that we can landfall into, but outside of that, not a ton of it. Some random cards here and there will give haste, but for the most part, no haste. A large part of the game plan requires tapping out, and that can kind of leave us open to people trying to remove Magus once they see the strength of the deck, or they start swinging at you in combat, so you're forced to block, or maybe you don't have blockers, and ideally you don't want to be blocking with Magus, and or she's going to be tapped. So the deck can kind of struggle if you're tapping out every turn and you're left like, oh, I can't cast my protection spells because I tapped out. Magus is a 1/1 right out of the command zone. Luckily, her first ability triggers on the combat that she comes down, so technically she's probably a 2/2, but that does put her in range of Lightning Bolt. Maybe 2/2 is enough to get her out of Orcish if you're lucky, but I try to dedicate all of the +1/+1 counters that Magus gives to Magus herself, because I just want to make sure that she's not within, Lightning Bolt range. That it feels really bad to lose your commander to a Lightning Bolt. Interaction. Our interaction package is basically dedicated to protecting Magus and kind of helping stop our opponents from winning if we need to. Legolas's Quick Reflexes is one of my favorite cards, not just in this deck, but in pretty much any deck. It has split second, so we're guaranteed to protect Magus. It also untaps Magus, which is just another key part of the deck, is helping untap her so we can reactivate her ability, get more triggers. Legolas's Quick Reflex is a great card. March of Swirling Mists is an X spell that lets us phase creatures out. If you use Magus to cast this spell, you can actually phase out 4 creatures just with her mana and a blue source alone. But it's also nice because we're tapping out so many times that we can use blue spells to help pay the cost of this to help protect Magus. We have very basic removal / counter magic as well. We've got Mana Drain, Fierce Guardianship, An Offer You Can't Refuse, Arcane Denial, Chaos Warp, Beast Within. Those are kind of helping stop our opponents from winning and or stopping them from stopping us, protecting Magus with counter spells if people try to target us with, any sort of removal or board wipes even. Very basic, like I said, we're not really reinventing the wheel anywhere here. It's just basic interaction. Ramp is the key to the deck. It is what the deck wants to do the most. Our deck is dedicated mostly to a lot of the green spells that are ramping us, and we don't have anything too crazy as far as like the basics go. I'm running Farseek and Rampant Growth as my 2-mana ramp. I don't have all the 2-mana ramp in here because I think too much of it and it starts to kind of water down the rest of the deck, because we're really looking for bigger ramp spells in this deck, much more than our 2-mana ramp. So we're running Reshape the Earth and Animist Awakening, which are both really great spells. Reshape the Earth is just 10 mana, get 10 lands. Animist Awakening is great because it's an X spell that we can copy with Magus, so we're looking at double the amount of cards and potentially looking at more lands. It's great because with Spell Mastery, those spells can come in untapped, which is a key way to start snowballing into more that the deck wants to do. Spelunking, not necessarily your classic ramp spell, but it is, enters battlefield, draw a card, you can put a land onto the battlefield. More importantly is that lands you control enter the battlefield untapped, so it's really turning our Reshape the Earth and our Open the Way, which we will definitely talk about later as far as great cards in the deck. It turns those cards into just powerhouses because now those lands are coming in untapped and we can really start snowballing into some better stuff. Draw. There's some Ravenous creatures in the deck, which are, if you don't know, Tyranids that came from the precon that Magus came in. If X is 5 or more, when that creature ETBs, you draw a card. And because we're copying those creatures, we get multiple triggers of that. So if you have 2 Zoanthropes come down, you're drawing 2 cards, which is great because most of the time you are not drawing cards just by putting a bunch into creatures. So it's a nice little combo with Magus herself. We have big draw X spells. There's Pull from Tomorrow, Blue Sun, Zenith. Both Blue Sun's more pip intensive, 3 blue pips. Pull from Tomorrow only 2. And Pull from Tomorrow is great. It's, just draw a ton of cards, only discard 1, even if you copy the spell. So if you say X is 5, draw 5, discard 1, draw another 5, discard 1. Tatyova is kind of like our land-based draw. She's really great at taking advantage of those big landfall spells that we're playing. So Open the Way, Animist Awakening, Reshape the Earth, drawing a ton of cards. A new addition to the deck that I've included is Terra Symbiosis, which is from Edge of Eternities, and whenever you put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control, you draw that many cards. You only do it once each turn. Because Magus has an ability that guarantees us at least 1, then we're drawing at least 1 extra card every turn. But if we're playing, let's say, Zoanthrope, then it's triggering off of however big Zoanthrope is. So it can be 5. So now Zoanthrope is entering, putting 5 +1/+1 counters on itself. We're drawing a card from Ravenous. Then we're drawing 5 cards from Terra Symbiosis. Maybe if we copy Zoanthrope, we're getting another card draw. I mean, you're looking at a ton of card draw with Terra Symbiosis in the deck, which is great because there's a lot of creatures that have X in the mana cost, which will trigger with +1/+1 counters on Terra Symbiosis. Some key cards in the deck that we're going to highlight and really do Tyler's version of the Pyramid of Power here with our little pyramid of what kind of creates the strongest version of this deck, which is the top of our pyramid, the MVP of the deck, the MVP of all time. What's one of my favorite cards? Open the Way. Open the Way is X into green. X cannot be greater than the number of players in the game. Reveal cards on the top of your library until you reveal X land cards. Put those land cards onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. In a normal deck, I think Open the Way is a great card. I think it's an underrated ramp spell. I don't think people are running enough Open the Way, because 4 of any lands, it can be your utility lands, it can be your basics, it can be whatever. As long as it says land, you're going to get it. And it can't whiff. It's guaranteed 4 in a regular game. In the deck, Open the Way is just the greatest card of all time. You're using Magus's ability to tap for 2, tapping other sources to get 6 mana total, and because Magus will copy the spell, you'll now get 8 lands off the top of your library. And for 6 mana, that is a great rate. They do come in tapped, which is why, you know, people will see that you have a lot of mana now and they'll really target you, but hopefully you've maybe built a board state where you can withstand a couple of combats, or maybe you can protect Magus or protect the pieces on your board so you can get set up for your next turn. But either way, it's the setup piece for the rest of our combos, because again, all of our other X spells needed a lot of mana into the X, and so Open the Way is what's getting us there. We have tutors in the deck specifically designed just to get Open the Way, so Mystical Tutor, Spellseeker, Solve the Equation, those are all basically just go get Open the Way. If you happen to draw Open the Way, and then you draw those tutors later, you can just go get kind of your other cool pieces, maybe some protection pieces, maybe some other cool instant sorceries, other ramp spells that you maybe want to cast, but for the most part, those spells are just trying to get us Open the Way, because Open the Way is really what's going to start the pyramid, so to speak. The next key to the deck are the untappers, and that's because if you are able to untap Magus and tap her again, you'll get another trigger to copy the next X spell that you get. So if you tap her twice using, let's say, Manamo, so you tap her for 2 mana, untap her with Manamo, tap her again, you floated 4 colorless mana, but you'll also now get 2 copies of whatever next spell you cast that has X in the cost. So let's say Open the Way. You're using the 4 colorless that you floated with Magus to pay for Open the Way, and now you're getting 12 lands off the top, because you're getting original Open the Way and the 2 copies. So again, the untappers are really just exponential value for us, because Magus is both giving us the mana and she's giving us the copy ability as well. So it's pulling double duty by giving us more mana to dump into our X spells and other copies of those spells. So it's just, the more untappers we have, the better. So we have Manamo, which is a land that lets us untap. We have Kiora that lets us untap. We have Kiora's Follower that lets us untap. We've got a Korean Ranger that lets us untap. There are multiple untappers. Retreat to Kolorheim is nice because it's a landfall triggered untap ability, so you can really tap Magus a bunch of times off of something like an Open the Way. So again, you can then start dumping that X into another spell maybe. And that's where we have our landfall payoffs, right? Because we are dumping so many lands out through Open the Way and our other ramp spells, and they're dumping out not just 1 or 2 lands, but 10, 12. I think the most I've ever cast Open the Way for, I've gotten 4 copies total, I think, for 24 lands. So you're really hoping that you have some sort of landfall payoff on the battlefield when you do that, so you can really double up on the value that you're getting from your lands entering. So Lotus Cobra is great because if our lands are coming in tapped, it's still giving us mana that we can then use to snowball into more. Ruin Crab is great because it just starts milling our opponent's cards. Sabo Tender is one of the effects that we have multiple of, which is just kind of like basic burn on landfall. Those are great to have in the deck for when we start doing some of our more complex win cons. But any of the landfalls are great. Tatiova is great because you're drawing cards and gaining life off of all the landfall. We've got Morag extra combats for landfall. There's all the landfall in the deck is really just benefiting from us having 10 plus landfalls on a turn sometimes. Which brings us into some of our win conditions. Too many to fit on one slide, so there is one more slide that we'll cover, but these are kind of your non-high power win cons. Open the Way is listed as a win con because it is just it's the whole point of the deck is trying to get as much mana as possible so that these big X spells become game ending spells, and you need a ton of mana, and Open the Way is just so good. Again, you can really snowball into some crazy stuff with Open the Way. One of our main win cons is Jai's Emulating Inferno, and that's because it's a legendary sorcery that deals X damage to each of up to 3 targets. We have 3 opponents, target each one of them, and just hit them for a ton of damage, which, again, if you have 10 to dump into the X, but you can tap Magus 2 or 3 times, you can get 2 or 3 copies of that spell. You know, do 20, 30, sometimes 40 damage. And the key to doing like multiple instances of copying a spell is that if somebody goes to, say, counter one of the if someone goes to counter one of the spells, they need multiple counter spells in order to stop all the copies. It's not one counter spell doesn't stop all the spells. So I've had situations before where I've cast Jai's Emulating Inferno, copied 4 times, but 3 of them are just enough to be lethal in case somebody wants to counter one of them. Fascination is one of our more goofy win cons that gets around some of the protection effects that people will cast. Teferi's the One Ring. And that's because it says each player, not target player. So each player draws X cards, or each player will put the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. For game ending ones, so this can be a draw spell for us, potentially. You are drawing your opponent's bunch of cards as well, so use it at your own risk. But most of the time this is a win con, because if you mill everybody out, you just pass the turn, your opponent will draw on an empty library, so on and so forth, until you're the last person standing. And it's really great because it does get around that protection. It's the same win condition for Ruin Crab as well, so you can Ruin Crab people even if their Teferi's out, because their library still exists, and you're never targeting anybody specifically. So those are great kind of goofier win cons to use to help get around some of the protection spells that people use, because some people can also fog the damage from Jai's Emulating Inferno or any of our other damage-based spells. So I like having kind of the different options there. You also just have classic beats, Mossborn Hydra, Zoanthrope, Hydroid Krasis, Goldvein Hydra, Malloc. Those are like the big baddies of the deck. They hit hard. Goldvein Hydra, again, I think super underrated card. 1 green and an X, Vigilance, Trample, Haste. So the turn they come down, they are hitting hard and hitting fast, and they're still up for blockers for the inevitable repercussions of people swinging back at you because they're pissed that you took off a chunk of their life total with little to no work. And if people want to remove them, as long as they die, you're getting tapped treasure tokens equal to their power. So they're just a self-feeding machine into our whole game plan as far as the deck is concerned. Zoanthrope is great because it's like a Jai's Emulating Inferno on a stick, so you can point all of the damage from your X cost at a single target, so you can use it to just nuke your opponents down. And because you're usually copying the spell with Magus, you can target multiple opponents or target the same opponent to really, if their board state is a threat to you, you can just take them out of the game. Mossborn Hydra is like our landfall win con. It comes down with 1+1/+1 counter and then doubles the number of counters on it each time a landfall enters. And with an Open the Way cost for 8, I mean, you are probably one-shotting somebody because it's just that good. Beats are just kind of like really great because even if you're not using them to necessarily kill opponents, maybe the opponents have some sort of protection effect, it really helps you create a wall to protect Magus as well when people try to, say, swing into you because they're trying to stop you through other means. And this is our last page of win conditions because we do have combos in the deck. They are just how I wanted to build Magus in a stronger way to be able to compete at the level that we tend to play as a group, which is on the higher end of things. And if you want a not combo version of Magus, you can definitely just take some of these pieces out / take out, or just not use them in the way that they're used here. So for example, the Ashaya Quirion Ranger loop, you want to leave Quirion Ranger in the deck even if you're not running the combo, because Quirion Ranger helps untap Magus irregardless of the loop. So you'll leave Quirion Ranger in the deck, you just have to take out Ashaya, and then she isn't a combo piece anymore. Freed from the Wheel can be used to help untap Magus, so you can leave that in the deck. You can leave Bloom Tender in the deck, and just, again, you don't have to attach Freed from the Wheel from Bloom Tender. These are the only combos that I really use in the deck. If there's other ones in the deck, I don't remember and or I don't use them very often. Ashaya and Green Ranger are a really strong combo because I'm running 2 tutors in the deck, Court of Calling and Green Sun Zenith, that both can go get Ashaya and Green Ranger together because you're copying the tutor with Magus, and you don't necessarily need haste in order to do the loop, as long as you have a creature that taps for green because of Ashaya. You can start doing the loop then, so you don't need haste to win. You just need a landfall payoff of some kind, whether it's Ruin Crab or one of the burn spells, or one of the burn landfall payoffs. Freed from the Bloom Tender, you basically have to have Walking Ballista in order for that to work, because you're getting infinite mana from Bloom Tender Freed from the Wheel, as long as you have enough colors to generate with Bloom Tender. And that can kind of suck because there's no way to get Walking Ballista. You just are hoping you draw into it. But you can put them into other X spells if that's the case as well. So anytime you're generating infinite mana in an X spell deck, that's great. But if you're looking for like the actual just like one-shotting the table combo, you just need Bloom Tender, Freed from the Wheel, and the Walking Ballista. But again, you can certainly take those out of the deck. You can maybe go more combo heavy if you really wanted to. Like I said, I have some tutors in the deck specifically for Ashaya and Green Ranger when I need to do that, but I also don't always have to go get them with those tutors. I can go get any other green creatures that I want. I can sometimes go get Bloom Tender herself. I can get Kiora's Follower to untap Magus. So you don't always have to just tutor up the win con if that's not the kind of game that you're playing. But that's all to the deck, really. It's pretty straightforward as far as things go. Again, you're just running a bunch of landfall payoffs, a bunch of untapping effects, and then kind of your basic protection for Magus, in addition to some big ramp spells. And that kind of creates a really fun combination for me to play, which is why it's my favorite deck. If you have a Magus deck, or if you've thought about building Magus, let me know in the comments, because I am always looking for new and exciting cards to put in, or new and exciting ways to build her. I have teased the idea of building like a not combo-y / big spells version of Magus, but just doing like straight Hydras, because I think that'd be really cool. Just haven't bitten the bullet yet. So if you have like a list, I'd love to see it. I scour YouTube looking for any video that Magus has ever been in, because I just like watching people do the Magus thing. I think it's really, really fun. I love that she doesn't care about what spells you're casting. It's not just instant sorceries, it's not just creatures, it's both, it's any. And I think people do a lot of really cool things with the card. So I would love to hear from you about what your thoughts are. I've played the deck on the channel multiple times. I will also link those videos so you can go watch them. You can see me probably resolve open the way in each of them. I think it's happened consistently, but that's what the deck wants to do. So it's a lot of fun to see. I won't spoil those games for you, but just know it's a cool deck. It does a lot of fun things. I will be playing it in the future. Hopefully we'll see it soon. Maybe we'll be playing against Aragorn. You know, we'll have a favorite deck versus favorite deck versus favorite deck versus favorite deck kind of game. Everyone has their go-to decks that they like to play, and it's a lot of fun. So like, comment, and subscribe so you can actually catch those videos when they come out.